Hi, I'm Martin Rizon P. Garpus. Our discussion is all about Philippine-American relation. Then, Module 1, U.S.-Philippine relations. Objective: trace the common cement and evolution of the U.S.-Philippine relations. Then, identify the highlights in the political-military relation between the U.S. and the Philippines. The United States took control of the Philippines from the Spanish and shared power with the emergent Filipino elite. Under the presidency of President Ferdinand Marcos, this mutual caging was at its most brazen. As a result, the military alliance suffered when the Philippines terminated the agreement, but the estrangement did not last long and both countries rekindled the special relations in response to the U.S. global war on terror. Filipino leaders not only accepted the realities of strategic game and exploited every every opening to assert national interest but also benefits from American largesse. For a variety of reasons, the Philippine-American friendship has maintained its tenacity. For one thing, the United States acquired sovereignty of the Philippines from the Spanish and then power with the emerging Filipino elite. Introducing suffrage, implementing public education, and promising future national independence. The two countries, especially bond, was further solidified by their shared experience fighting the Japanese in World War II and suppressing a post-war communist and communist insurgency. The U.S. this alliance to course the Philippines to accept an economic and military treaty that favored American firms and interests. The next is U.S.-Philippine relation. Philippines is working to diversity its security interests away from a singular reliance on the United States. The Philippines is developing stronger security ties with its Asian partners. It is establishing a bilateral relation with China to address security concerns over the territorial dispute in the South China Sea. Then, the Philippines is attempting to diversity its security interests in order to reduce dependency on the U.S. With its Asian partners, the Philippines is strengthening its security connections. It is forming a bilateral partnership with China to resolve security concerns over the South China Sea territorial. And the next is U.S.-Philippine relations are based on shared history and commitment to democratic principle. The Philippines modeled its governmental institution on those of the United States. Human links continues to form a stronger bridge between the two countries. There are an estimated 4 million Americans of Philippines ancestry in the U.S. and 300,000 American citizens in the Philippines. Relation between United States and the Philippines are built on a common history and a commitment to democratic principles. The Philippines governmental structures were based those of the United States. Human connections remain a major link between the two countries in the United States. There are an estimated of 4 million people of the Philippine heritage, with 300,000 Americans living in the Philippines. And the next reporter is Francis.
I'm Francis Castillo and we will discuss Module 2, U.S.-Philippine Relations in the New Administration. Objective: explain the changes in the U.S.-Philippine relations which transpired during the new administration. President Rodrigo Duterte. President Rodrigo Duterte steered the country's foreign policy towards a more nationalist narrative, marking a shift from present Philippine leaders under Aquino. The Philippines had forged closer military ties with the United States to deal with the China threat, but Rodrigo Duterte, elected president in 2016, cast doubt on the strategy. He also sought to heal relations with China rather than inflame them by pressing the tribunal's ruling. In the days following the 9 May 2016 election, Washington was vigilant about any possible human rights violation under the Duterte administration. U.S. law restricts the provision of funds to units of foreign security forces when the Department of State has credible evidence that the unit has committed gross violation of human rights. Agency guidance extends these restrictions to individuals of foreign security forces and requires us to establish procedures to vet candidates for U.S.-sponsored training for possible violations. U.S. President Barack Obama. U.S. President Barack Obama canceled a planned meeting with Philippines leader Rodrigo Duterte. The White House said on September 5, 2016, after his Asian ally launched a foul-mouthed tirade against him. Duterte called Obama a son of a whore hours earlier, vowing he would not allow the American leader to lecture him on human rights. President Obama will not be holding a bilateral meeting with President Duterte of the Philippines this afternoon, National Security Council spokesman Ned Price said. Further evidence of Duterte's approach came in an address to civil servants 12 of September 2016, as the president called for U.S. military advisors to be withdrawn from southern Mindanao, where Philippine troops had been battling Muslim insurgents. U.S. Special Forces had been in the region to help with counterterrorism operations since 2002. Duterte said, "As long as we stay with America, we will never have peace in Mindanao." Duterte allowed photo and accounts of U.S. troops who in 1906 were accused of atrocities against Muslims during a rebellion against American rule. Philippine Foreign Minister Perfecto Yasay and senior military leaders said Duterte's comments were not a sign that agreements between the United States and Philippines would be abrogated. Initially, there were no signs that Duterte was interested in scuttling the broader U.S.-Philippine Defense Agreement. So this is my explanation. When the U.S. Department of State receives reliable proof that a unit of foreign security forces has committed grave human rights breaches, the distribution of money to that unit is restricted. More evidence of Duterte's strategy came in a speech to public officials on September 12, 2016, in which the president urged for U.S. military advisors to be evacuated from southern Mindanao, where Philippine forces were fighting Muslim militants. Washington was on the lookout for any prospective human rights breaches under Duterte's government in the days following the election on May 9, 2016. After his Asian ally began a foul-mouthed diatribe against him, U.S. President Barack Obama canceled a planned meeting with Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte. The White House said on September 5, 2016, These limits are now extended to members of foreign security forces, and installations must create processes to examine candidates for U.S.-sponsored training. He claimed he had wanted to rethink foreign policy for a long time but couldn't because he didn't want to provoke a rupture with America. President Rodrigo Duterte has guided the Philippines' foreign policy towards a more nationalist narrative, a departure from previous administration. Duterte's words, according to Philippines Foreign Minister Perfecto Yasay and top military officers, are not a hint that U.S.-Philippine accords would be terminated. Duterte has already referred to Obama as a son of a whore, warning that American leader would not be allowed to lecture him on human rights. Initially, there was no indication that Duterte wanted to scrap the wider U.S.-Philippine defense deal. However, President Rodrigo Duterte, who was elected in 2016 on the policy, Duterte showed image and report of U.S. troops accused of crimes against Muslims during an uprising against American authority in the 1906 during his address. Since 2002, U.S. special troops have been stationed in the region to assist with counterterrorism activities. President Obama will not meet with Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte this afternoon, according to National Security Council spokesman Ned Price. Under Aquino, the Philippines strengthened military relations with the United States in response to the danger posed by China. It will continue by Harris Delphine.
Thank you, Francis Castillo. Duterte said 28 September 2016. Duterte announced on September 28, 2016 that the joint military exercise between his country and the United States scheduled for early October 2016 will be the last between the two countries to avoid getting pulled into any conflict between Washington and Beijing. Duterte said the Philippines will honor existing security accords but will not participate in any South China Sea patrol with the U.S. Foreign Affairs Secretary Perfecto Yasay, breaking free from the Philippines' shackling dependent on the United States to effectively manage both internal and foreign security challenge, has become critical in ending our nation's subservience to US interests with foreign affairs. Secretary Perfecto Yasay. Denouncing the neo-colonial nature of U.S.-Philippine bilateral relations. People movement representing indigenous and national minorities filled the street of Manila on October 21, 2016, burning U.S. flags and calling from the termination of an unfair practice, with their former colonizer protesting the neo-colonial nature of U.S.-Philippine bilateral relationship. The nature of the Mutual Defense Treaty, the Mutual Logic Support Agreement, the Visiting Force Agreement, and the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, as well as the militarization of civilian rural village, are all on the line. The Foreign Affairs Secretary of the Philippines attempt to clarify his country's relationship with the United States. Foreign Affairs Perfecto Yasay, although naming the United States from the Philippines closely, stated the country must split from its former colonial master in order to promote its prosperity and national ties, and that breaking away from our close friends only militarily ally and strategy partner would not be in our best national interest. However, breaking away from our former colonial master is required in pursuing our independent foreign policy. In initial breaking away from the debilitating mindset of dependency and surveillance economically and militarily. Duterte downgraded security ties with America. Duterte has downgraded security ties with the United States, threatening to evict U.S. troops stationed in the Philippines and canceling the massive war games in the disputed South China Sea under the recently enacted Enhanced Defense Cooperation Pact. He also limited U.S. access to Philippine sites. The United States appeared to be on the verge of losing oldest partner in Asia, with China quickly finding the void.
Ang susunod po sana ay si Steve Tan.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Steven Bryce from CJ1B2 and I discussed Defense Secretary Delphine Lorenzana said November 7, 2016 that security alliance with the United States, including the 24 Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement that allows prolonged deployment of American forces in the country, would not be scraped. The Philippines will cut to 6 or 7 the number of military drills, with the US set for 2017 from an initial figure of more than a dozen or 7 drills. Donald Trump invited Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte to Washington to discuss various issues, including the threat of North Korea present to regional security. Trump's White House invitation to Duterte was somewhat surprising. Donald Trump, in-invite niya si Rodrigo Duterte regarding dun sa threat galing North Korea. Then, Donald Trump held bilateral talks with his Filipino counterpart Rodrigo Duterte ahead of the East Asia Summit in the Philippines. White House President Secretary Sarah Sanders on November 12, 2017 told reports the issue of human rights did come up Trump talks with Duterte. While at times challenging politics towards Philippine-US alliance cooperation, a newly invigorated alliance is moving well into its 7th decade. Following the vote that ended the U.S. military presence in the Philippines in 1991. This effort became much more viable as MILF negotiations moved towards a settlement. Key work remains to be done in the military modernization process, and that will require an administration that comes forward in 2016. Continue this commitment to building external defense capability. This calls for ongoing alliance cooperation, including the implementation of EDCA, continued collaboration with partners such as South Korea and Japan, to realize major acquisition programs and build capacity. Ultimately, the Philippines-US alliance is a vital means to realizing the object of a minimum credible defense. That's all. Thank you.